Hello, good morning. Welcome to the Sunday Supplement. Coming up on today's show, Antonio Conte. He warns the Chelsea board he won't change after winning the FA Cup against Manchester United at Wembley yesterday. Gareth Southgate, he's named his 23 for the World Cup. Just how far will England go when they get to Russia? And the managerial merry-go-round, it's begun. Arsenal, they prepare to appoint Mikel Arteta, but Moyes, Big Sam, Carvajal and Lambert, they've all left their jobs. With us to discuss all that and much more, football royalty is with us today. Shaun, Custis, he's head of sport at The Sun. Oliver Holt is the chief sports writer at The Mail on Sunday. Henry Winter is the chief football writer at The Times. Good morning, guys. Good of you to join us. Henry, you had a busy day yesterday, royal wedding, followed by the FA Cup final, wasn't it, for you?
Didn't get to the royal weddding. You're the expert on Palace.
Oh, I love it. You were ready for me, weren't you? I was trying to ambush you then. Anyway, don't forget, you can tweet the show, Sartorial Elegance and beyond, at Sunday Sup. The best will appear on your screen over the next 90 minutes. Let's have a look at the papers this morning. We'll start with the Sunday People. You'll notice a theme running on the back of the Red Tops this morning. To have and to hold. Chelsea winning the FA Cup yesterday against Manchester United. That's the 8th time they've won the trophy, but they've got some good stories. James Collins has been dumped by email at West Ham. He's not happy. Jamie Vardy on his way to Atletico Madrid, according to Tom Hopkinson this morning. And Newcastle's sale, it's heading for the rocks. Mike Ashley wants £400 million to sell the club now, according to the People this morning. Back page of the Sun. Pride and gloom, the pride for Chelsea to go on to win the FA Cup. Mourinho not happy yesterday after that defeat. The Sunday Mirror, Henry's loving these headlines. Something borrowed, not sure what was borrowed, but something is definitely blue. They'll have the blue ribbons on the FA Cup for the next season after Eden Hazard rolled that penalty home yesterday at Wembley. Back of the Mail on Sunday, the warning from Conte. So now, go and sack me. We were there for that press conference. We'll come on to that very, very shortly. This is a great shame, but it's a story that had to be written. England ready for World Cup racism. Gareth Southgate about to talk to his squad before they travel out to Russia. We'll come on to a Champions League final preview in part 5. Liverpool, of course, playing Real Madrid next Saturday in Kiev. Mo's time to deliver. That's the Sunday Express ahead of that final. There was another showpiece event yesterday. It was, of course, the royal wedding. Oh, happy couple, aren't they? Another happy couple here. Shaun and Henry, reunited. I was just thinking, this picture, beard or no beard, with Harry yesterday. He went with the beard, Henry, but...
Yeah, I didn't really see it, but apparently it all went to plan, so it was great.
Yeah, beard or no beard?
I'm not bothered.
Everyone's sitting on the fence. That's unlike this programme. Let's talk Chelsea. We were all at the Cup final yesterday to see Chelsea beat Manchester United. An important win, big win for Chelsea yesterday, Antonio Conte, but where does this leave him, his future, and what will Chelsea's board do this week, Henry? What are your expectations?
Well, I think the expectations of everyone is that he's going to leave. I think you saw the way their Premier League season tailed off. You know, the changes against Huddersfield, the performance against Newcastle United. I think that was pretty unacceptable. Whatever his motives were, whether he was focusing purely on yesterday and the FA Cup final. But what we saw yesterday in the technical area was the Conte of old, the sort of the emotionally engaged, it's almost tactile Conte urging his team on to get that trophy. And look, and if he's leaving, then he's actually had a pretty good time. He's got the title, he's got the FA Cup. I think, interestingly, talking to some of the Chelsea fans last night and looking at some of the forums, I think they have slightly fallen out of love with him, but I think their enduring respect for him was pleased that he went out on a high like that. He got his tactics right. He out-Mourinho'd in terms of the defensiveness and the brilliance of the performance. Rudiger and Cahill and Azpilicueta and Kante in front of them. And then the joy that is Eden Hazard. So it was a very Italian, very effective performance, and as a parting shot, pretty successful one.
What does it say about English football that a manager can win the Premier League in his first season in the country with Chelsea, and then the second season, OK, they don't finish in the top 4, Ollie, but goes on to win the FA Cup, and yet the expectation is that he'll be sacked? Is that the modern world?
Yeah, but I mean, we've become fairly familiar with that at Chelsea. I mean, you think of Ancelotti finishing second and getting the sack. I mean, it's been too much of a game for me this season, the Chelsea story. I mean, right from the start of the season, they were such a good story the season before. Conte made such a massive impression, I think, on everybody. And right from the start of this season, instead of building on that, it just seemed it's been on the brink of implosion, it seems, the whole season. And I just think it's a shame, because I love watching Chelsea the previous season. As Henry says, Hazard is one of the best players in the world and was a delight to watch in the first half yesterday. So it just seems a bit of a waste to me, but it's the Chelsea way. I mean, it's high turnover of managers, and to be fair to them, they haven't done too badly out of it. But they're not into dynasties at Chelsea. They're into quick turnover.
What you say about the week before, I watched all the Newcastle-Chelsea game for probably personal reasons as much as anything, and it was so easy. It was unbelievable how easily Newcastle cut Chelsea apart. Conte was disinterested on the touchline. Henry said it's like the Conte of old yesterday. It really was, and you wondered, he's got to get that back for the cup final. And when he does get that back, he is a different animal. And the thing about yesterday's game was, you think, well, Eden Hazard, for me, is the best player on that field. He's going to be the best player on that field. And if he fires, he makes the difference. Because the rest are almost cancelling each other out. And I think Conte knew if he got Hazard up for it and that Hazard responded, that they would win that game.
They did win that game. Do you think he's had a raw deal, Conte?
I think Conte was sending a message to the board yesterday. He did a picture with his coaching staff. He really made a point of a picture with his coaching staff. And I think his message there was, it's me and these people who've done this because he feels you haven't supported me enough in the transfer market, and look what I can do with this staff. I have got you a Premier League and I've got you an FA Cup, and almost you don't appreciate us enough. Now, you can argue whether that's right or wrong, but that was the message I thought he was giving over.
He began his press conference yesterday, didn't he, by saying, I told you it was going to be a hard season at the start of the season.
But he partly made it a hard season. I mean, the more you look back at that text he sent Diego Costa, you think, well, it looks even more damaging now than it looked at the time. But look, there's a frustration inherent in Chelsea. You look at their under-18s. What are their under-18s? Win 4 trophies this season. All the great work that Jody Morris is doing. I understand it's a short-term job as Chelsea manager, but it would just be so nice to see some of those players come through. I know Chalobah went up to get a medal yesterday, and they have got one or two others have sort of gone around the first team. But you look at maybe Nathan Ake is not necessarily a top Champions League player, but you look at the performance he's had for Bournemouth this season. He's been outstanding. So I just thought he got the balance wrong. He's been sulking a little bit. You could see that in his body language. But there's also something about that Chelsea dressing room that they keep driving themselves on, even when they don't necessarily have a manager that they completely believe in. We've seen them win so many trophies, just that hardcore, even when the dressing room has changed and it wasn't the sort of the Lampard, John Terry, Drogba force of old. There's something in that dressing room, and that Chelsea team went out to win for themselves as much as the manager.
Do you think he should go? You're saying it looks like he's going to go, but by the sound of it, you think he should. I don't necessarily think he should. I think he is capable, if he's supported in the transfer market, of building another team and a one that he wants in his image. So why do you think he should go?
Because how many of the players afterwards came out and actually said,
absolutely,
we did this for the manager, he's been under pressure, the media have been having a go at him, all the speculation, and they were given a chance to support him, and they weren't particularly effusive.
Maybe they're not staying.
Well, the players aren't staying.
Maybe some of them won't.
Well, I think if you look at the future of Chelsea Football Club, it's far more important that Hazard stays than Conte.
No, but do you think Conte should go? That's what I'm asking.
Yeah, I do, because I think he's just... It sounds like he's upset too many people behind the scenes.
I also think if you're the Chelsea manager, you go into that club knowing what the score is. You know that you're not going to win those kind of battles. So history should have told Conte that he has to be pragmatic. He's not going to win those kind of battles. So, I mean,
So do you get the sense that they need that friction there?
Yeah.
To succeed?
Whether
it's creative tension, whether...
Yeah, it's always been... I mean, it's always been the way under Abramovich, hasn't it? It's always been the way. And as I say, they've not done too badly out of it. I think in England we still... we're probably beginning to detach ourselves from it, but we're built up on we're used to the sort of patriarchal system with Wenger and Ferguson. I think instinctively as English fans or media, we like continuity, and we see that as a good thing. But that's obviously not the wider European way, and it's becoming no longer our way.
But he comes from Italy, where he was used to that way. So why he should suddenly think the Chelsea way is unusual or doesn't treat him correctly, I don't know, because That's the way in Italy, isn't it?
Well, maybe he expected that he would only be there for 2 years and move on. You know, if that was his culture.
I bet it'll be cute to get him, though.
Absolutely, yeah.
Well, I think he's expecting to. I mean, going back to your question to Henry, I mean, I think he is expecting to move on, and it's a sort of shadow play.
Is he asking for it? He's asking for the sack. He's saying.
I'm not saying he's asking for the sack, but I think he's expecting to. I don't think. Does anybody expect him to be there at the start of next season, including him? I don't think so. But
look, he is a good coach. You know, strip away all the sort of, you know, the speculation and whatever the mood of the players is. Tactically, he set them up brilliantly this season. Tactically, his response going to the 3-5-2 or 3-4-3 last season, after, you know, in the second half of that Arsenal game at the Emirates, you know, that he's an outstanding coach. He hasn't actually had a great record in cups, but in leagues he's been terrific. So, as you say, he will absolutely get snapped up.
I think there's possibly a slight fall if he's challenged by any player. He's not into having a mature discussion about it, is he? Like in the case of Custis, in the case of David Luiz as well. Moment David Luiz thought we should have done this slightly differently in that Champions League game. Boss, right? That's it. Gone. History. Nowhere. David Luiz was on the pitch yesterday, sort of half-heartedly celebrating, sort of trying to look like he was pleased, but I'm sure he's not, and I'm sure he wants to see the back of Conte.
And if they do see the back of Conte, Luis Enrique, one of the names in the frame at Chelsea, out of work. He's been on a sabbatical after leaving Barcelona. Is he the next man in? Is he the right man?
Look, if the board want to continue, which they will, in the model that they've got, he's possibly somebody who would fit into that. You know, used to that sort of hierarchical system, I suppose. Look, it might not be the only name. It's not the only name in the frame, is it? So, I don't know. The right man for Chelsea is for the board to be able to manipulate them, but that person has to have a bit of edge as well. That person has to be prepared to take them on a bit, but know when to step back. I think that's quite a difficult dynamic. You've got to find that person who will challenge you, but will know when to step away from the argument.
I would love to see if I mean, Villa, you know, it's a huge playoff, but if John Terry's got a decision to make this summer, if Villa don't go up via the playoffs, I would love to see him back at Chelsea in some capacity. Just in terms of, you know, on the coaching, maybe liaising with the academy, because I do think they miss a little bit of his engagement with the whole. I mean, Conte was great and he had that relationship with the fans, but there didn't seem any relationship with the academy. It certainly, as Shaun's pointing out, there didn't seem a proper relationship with the board. So I think maybe John, I know John's got his weaknesses, but I do actually think someone of his stature, maybe a Lampard or Drogba, someone like him, just having him back in the dugout, on the coaching staff. Obviously, you would need a strong coach who wouldn't feel overawed by having someone like him there, but I would just think they need to re-engage a little bit, the Chelsea dugout to the rest of the club.
How do they keep Eden Hazard? Because he fired a warning at the start of the week in the build-up to the final that he wants to challenge for the major honours. So that's the level you talked about him being one of the best players in the world, Ollie. Can they convince him to stay?
I don't know. I do believe he is. I think when you get below the level of Messi and Ronaldo, below those two, I think that Hazard, on his day, is in that very next rung. That he's right up there. I mean, he's a wonderful, wonderful player to watch. He hasn't done it consistently enough recently, but I suppose they need to sell the club to him. They need to make sure there are more days like yesterday, and that, you know, it's going to be difficult, I think, because obviously they're not in the Champions League.
You said you set it up at the start of the week. He didn't end it at the end of the week either, so he was given the opportunity really to say, well, you must want to fancy staying now, Ed, and all of this, and he's like, I'm just happy today. And it's going to be a bit of a long-running saga, possibly.
But where does he go? I mean, obviously he's linked with Real Madrid. They would, I mean, they're clearly going to have to do a little bit of trimming in the summer. I think he will be in huge demand if he and Belgium have a particularly good World Cup. Look, he's a fantastic player. We saw that yesterday. But remember, this is a Chelsea team that has created a platform for him. If he went to Real Madrid, you've obviously there's so much focus on Ronaldo there. PSG, possibly, if he wants to sort of step down in terms of a league in intensity. I think Chelsea have to do everything to keep him. The new manager, whoever it is, also has to show, listen, we are creating a stage for you here.
he should be near the top of anybody's list. Real Madrid, Barcelona. I mean, him and Griezmann, I think, are two hottest properties on the market, and everyone's expecting Griezmann to go to Barcelona.
Everyone says he's very low maintenance when he goes in to do contract negotiations, that, there's not a huge sort of entourage with him. He's quite an impressive individual.
OK. When we look at the Chelsea squad, the 11 that played yesterday, for example, Shaun, do you see a group of players that next season, if that is the squad and the team that, say, Luis Enrique or whoever inherits, are they ready to challenge for the Premier League title with that group of players?
I don't think so. I don't think any of us think that. I also am puzzled by Conte's obsession with Bakayoko in midfield. I think that's a terrible season, but always seems to be able to.
But their biggest wins this season, they've had Bakayoko in there.
I know, but he never, to me, inspires much confidence. He's made a lot of mistakes. Look, you've got to hold your hands up. Rudiger yesterday, excellent, superb performance. So that augurs well for the future. Courtois, will he be happy? Is he happy to stay? Not so sure. Do they bring Batshuayi back? Who's done OK since he's been away.
That depends on the manager, doesn't it?
Indeed it does. And Morata needs to get his confidence back, which are not. But I do think Giroud's been a success for them, and I thought he would be. He's a wholehearted player who I think Arsenal should never have got rid of, and he, I think, gives them a little bit of confidence and belief that they can do well. But they probably need 2 or 3 players and not lose Hazard, and I think that's virtually impossible for them.
I found it interesting at the start of this season when Lukaku was patronised as being a sort of poor man's Morata, and you look at the comparative seasons that they've had. Lukaku's had a much better season. I think going back to this Chelsea side, going back to the game yesterday, it wasn't a great game. Hazard was the difference, and they looked like two fairly uninspired sides, but Hazard was the difference. So it'd be a huge blow if they lose him.
But also just a word of respect for Gary Cahill, because he's taken a bit of stick this season. A lot of questions, should he go to the World Cup? I thought he was terrific yesterday. I mean, his distribution, I actually did one terrific pass, but his distribution is not a sort of John Stones or a Harry Maguire, but he just showed the art of defending there, almost like Diego Godin.
Did you enjoy the game, Henry?
Do you know what? I love cup finals, so I'm the wrong person to ask. Everything about it, the weather, the occasion. I don't like Wembley as a stadium. We don't need the National Stadium, blah, blah, blah. But I actually thought the atmosphere in there, I thought they made one key mistake, as the FA do. They always, I don't know whether they're hard of hearing or there's an issue there, but they always turn up the volume at the wrong moment. And you could hear the Chelsea fans singing Ray Wilkins' name as they went up to collect the trophy, and then suddenly just had all this noise. And I thought that was a pity. Otherwise, I just thought the tributes to Ray Wilkins, having his widow there to present the trophy, all those things. Look, I love all that pomp and circumstance. You can keep your Windsor. I think the pomp and circumstance of Wembley with the RAF there and just everything about it, glorious weather, but actually a game that didn't quite fit the occasion.
But the disappointing thing was we got the game we expected. That was the disappointing thing. We weren't surprised. I didn't hear anybody
disappointed. You knew.
I didn't hear anybody beforehand say it's going to be a cracker. This will be a thriller. 90 minutes on the edge of your seats. Jose says actually 0-0 is a thriller apparently now. It's not a thing.
Your brother would say that, I'm sure. But...
Well, don't accuse me of
He's not here to
way.
defend himself. No. We can't talk about Neil Custis today. It's all about Shaun Custis. OK, Jose Mourinho said yesterday it's down to the media to judge how Manchester United and how Mourinho got on this season. Guess what's coming next? Right, Jose Mourinho is on holiday now. He said he was looking forward to the analysis over the next couple of days of Manchester United's season, and his season, he ended it trophyless. I've been reading your piece with interest this morning, Ollie. Mourinho's turning United into dinosaurs. It's pretty savage on his football, his approach, and where Manchester United are at this moment in time. You said under him, Manchester United are becoming the dinosaurs of English football's elites, where City and Liverpool thrill the neutrals, United are pale and a cautious imitation of their former selves. You're not happy with his approach. What needs to change?
I mean, I think obviously I would say this because I wrote it, but I think it's kind of hard to argue with that. I mean, I don't think any neutral would say that they enjoy watching Manchester United as much as they enjoy watching Manchester City or Liverpool or Tottenham, actually, for that matter. And United fans will say, well, quite rightly, point out they finished second above Tottenham and Liverpool in the league, and that's a fair point. But I think that they, as various people pointed out yesterday, Paul Hayward included, Mourinho is all about trophies, and he can get away with his style when he's winning trophies. We all accept that. When he's not winning trophies, there's no consolation. Nobody can say, yeah, but they play great football, because they haven't played great football, and because I actually think an increasing number of their fans are growing unhappy and disillusioned with the style with which they're playing, and when they're not winning trophies, there's nothing to fall back on. And again, I think the phrase "Emperor's new clothes" has been mentioned a few times. A lot of us, I'm a huge fan of Marcus Rashford, as I think most people would be. I think Mourinho's handling of him has been utterly strange. Barney Ronay, I saw, did a tweet from The Guardian, last night saying that he felt Rashford had been vandalised by Mourinho. And that struck a chord with me. I think Rashford was a shadow of what he was when Mourinho arrived yesterday in the cup final. I find that sad. He's starting to pick, he's sort of aiming a few barbs at Lukaku in the press conference yesterday. I look for signs of subtlety in this Manchester United side, and there aren't any, really. There's Mata, who I love as a player, who's being pushed to the margins. Where is the Eriksen in this United team? Where's the Kevin De Bruyne? Where's the David Silva? We go on and on. I'm sorry. Different people like different things. I don't enjoy Manchester United's style of play. I don't enjoy the direction in which Mourinho is taking Manchester United. I think there's a joylessness about it, and the worrying thing, I think, for United fans is that the joylessness is increasing. I don't think there's much sign of light at the end of the tunnel. Sure, they've improved their league position this season, but I mean, they're a country mile behind Manchester City, and their other great rivals, Liverpool, are in the Champions League final. Other people are moving forward. I don't believe that Manchester United are, really.
Henry, is there a great Manchester United side waiting to get out, waiting to burst out, and they're being restricted by Mourinho? Or are they just not good enough?
Well, I think first, great is a word that's too freely used. There is a good side in there. Yeah, I mean, I sort of echo a lot of what Ollie says, but I do think that this whole thing for me is about responsibility. It's about Mourinho's responsibility to his players to improve his man management. Why is Eric Bailly on the bench when he's individually a better centre-half than either Smalling or Jones? Why is Luke Shaw, who everyone knows is the type of individual who needs an arm around him and the support, the type of player who would respond to a Guardiola or a Ferguson, and their more intuitive, intelligent way of man management. With Mourinho, it's tough love. It's a cold climate with Mourinho. But I also think that players have to take responsibility for themselves. Pogba is given a stage. You could argue there were sort of one or two sort of tactical inhibitions that he had to overcome yesterday in terms of the way that Mourinho started him. But Pogba is a magnificent player, and he should be saying, right, there are not enough leaders in this team. I am the type of individual. I'm going to the World Cup as one of the world stars. I should be showing it here in the cup final. So I think players also have to take individual responsibility. I'll take your point about Rashford. I don't think he's necessarily being vandalised. He's actually been given quite a few opportunities this season to play. I think Rashford himself has to train on. Who's he being coached? Is the level of individual coaching for him? He's still a kid and he has been given a chance. I think the moment Lukaku was out, Mourinho likes that sort of physical centre forward, the sort of Drogba type we've seen in the past. I think that was a huge problem, missing him. But Mourinho has to take responsibility as well. I think he's really, in this modern world, you look at Pochettino. One of Pochettino's greatest strengths, man management. Guardiola, Klopp, great managers with great man management. And I just think Mourinho, you saw it within about 10 minutes when Rashford did that sort of almost like grubber kick across the thing. Yeah. And Mourinho, he just went absolutely spare. And you think, well, you know what? Do you have to treat kids, young players, as if you're a father to a son. OK, criticise them at time, try and educate them, but actually ultimately give them love. And Rashford needed some love. But where I think that Mourinho, the important thing is that after Van Gaal, after Moyes, there is such a desire within the building for Mourinho to do well. And I think Ed Woodward will back him in the transfer market. They'll address the defence, they'll address one or two others. And Manchester United, as they often do, will spend their way out of this situation. But Mourinho's got to look at himself and realise, actually, the solution is also within me and improving my man management.
Yeah, and if you talk about his man management, Henry, I mean, the way Jermaine Genius talked about it this week, I really don't understand why he said what he said about Rashford. He didn't name him, I don't think, but it was obviously he was talking about after the defeat to Brighton. I mean, Jermaine Genius called it disgusting. It was just...
He had been poor, though, Rashford against Brighton.
Absolutely.
But you can't forget the goals against Liverpool, the great goals he scored against Liverpool at Old Trafford. That's what he's capable of doing, isn't it?
That is what he's capable of doing, and I just... absolutely, you're right, and United fans will say that Rashford has not had a great season, but I think that, you know, ultimately, as we all know, the buck stops with the manager. If he's not... I totally take your point about players taking individual responsibility, but equally, everything flows from the manager, doesn't it? And you also make about the way that Guardiola and Pochettino and Klopp handle their players and breathe confidence into their players. The opposite seems to be happening at United.
Also,
you're still here.
Sorry, he's telling us things that we're not seeing. He's saying to us, you don't see this. He's almost saying to fans, media, everybody, Shearer and Wright, in the case of the coverage on the BBC yesterday, almost you don't understand. You haven't seen this. This is wonderful. We dominated the game. We did this, we did that. And that all the rest of you are idiots. You don't see what I'm doing. Now, at Chelsea, he didn't really, certainly first time around, he never really needed to do that. We knew what Chelsea were about. They had some skillful players. They had Lampard on midfield, Terry at the back, Drogba up front. You knew what you were getting, but it was quite exciting a lot of the times. The more he keeps talking, and he has to make the narrative, you lot don't understand, I'm the only one who knows this is entertaining. I referred earlier on to him saying that he thought 0-0 was more entertaining than 6-0. And that's where he's at with it. He's trying to seemingly educate us down some path to understand this is really great.
He also said when he said that, he also said as a football lover. So
so we don't love football because we don't appreciate his tactical brilliance. Well, I'm afraid nowadays, as Ollie said, Man United just is more than that in a way that Chelsea wasn't, really. We've got to be honest. Man United represent a style which you have to play with. Van Gaal didn't really understand that, and Mourinho chooses not to understand that.
What is Mourinho's biggest single failing?
I think it's man management, and I mean Henry mentioned Luke Shaw. There's been Rashford, Lukaku, Martial. I mean,
Pogba,
Martial is a
Alexis
fantastic
Sanchez.
talent. Martial is a fantastic talent, and again, I just he's been linked with a move away this summer. I hope he doesn't go for United's sake. But the flair players under Mourinho now, and you're right to point out, I think, in those early days at Chelsea, that was a great side to watch. Yeah. And they had Robin and Duff on the wings, Drogba up front, Lampard, obviously. That was a terrific side. So it's not always been like this, but I think there is a worrying tendency for flair players to be distrusted and marginalised, and that is clearly what is happening in this.
What did he get? What did he buy Sanchez for? Why did Sanchez come in? Who appears to be getting a free pass off him, by the way, in all the criticism that's going on. I don't know what Sanchez does or is supposed to do, where he's supposed to play, whether they're supposed to give him the ball or whether he's supposed to pick up the scraps. I don't think he knows what he's supposed to do, and I'm not really sure why Mourinho wanted him, because he doesn't seem to fit into any sort of system.
He does bring that urgency, and I think that's what he wants.
You can't say he's been a success since he arrived.
I'm not saying he's been a success. I'm not saying he's been a success. He is apparently fantastic at Carrington, but obviously you want that at Old Trafford, obviously. But I think there is that sort of urgency, making things happen, winning free kicks, assists, occasional goals. I think that he looked at that, but I agree with you. I think tactically his complicated thing. He's obviously marginalised Martial even even further because Martial's not been playing on the left or Rashford. So no, I don't think Mourinho gets away blameless with Sanchez. No.
His coaching also appears, I think, tired and listless compared to Klopp and Guardiola in particular. I mean, he looks.
But do you watch him coach?
Semi-detached half of the time. I'm talking about things like his attitude on the touchline, his attitude towards his players, what you hear about Klopp, what we see of Klopp and Guardiola, what we see of him, what we, you know, I know people scoff at this, but I know that a lot of people at Manchester United don't scoff at this. He doesn't even, you know, he hasn't even set up home in Manchester. There's a level of detachment there that I would find worrying as a United fan.
It's also been totally highlighted by what's going on at Manchester City in terms of the joy of their football, in terms of the clear engagement between. You look at Guardiola and the way he responds to his players, how he goes. You know, he is the type of employer, boss that you would want to work for because he just absolutely sort of fills you with belief and love. He even does it to opposing players as well. Guardiola. I mean, he's very sort of tactile, very effusive individual. And that can't be easy for Manchester United fans when they see that
trick,
going on.
though, used to be he had the mix. He had the mix of humour, a bit of serious. He had the mix of a bit of exciting football, a bit of pragmatic football. It was a great combination, which made him a great manager. He's lost that. He's gone, in my view, more sour and more defensive, and doesn't seem to have the wherewithal to get out of that. It's almost like, this is the way you win trophies now, I've decided, because my players maybe aren't quite as good as their players in some areas, and this is the way it's going to be. Whereas before he seemed to, I don't know, he mixed it up much better.
Is he yesterday's man?
No, I don't think so. I think that given the right players and the right circumstances, it will work for him. I do believe, I mean, Henry has already decided Conte's got to go. He probably thinks Mourinho's got to go as well, but I don't think that's a good idea.
I think no. You keep Mourinho, but I think he's got to. I mean, echoing some of Ollie's points, he's got to look at himself as well.
But is he prepared to? Do you think that's
interesting to see the people he gets around him now that Rui Faria has gone. Ferguson
Ferguson
always had this great trick of rotate your number two, so it challenged you. It was a mistake that Wenger, not going to Wenger, but you know that was a mistake that Wenger made. He didn't have anyone to challenge him. And I just think maybe Mourinho needs another voice. Is Ed Woodward strong enough to
He's got that other voice with Michael Carrick on the bench now. He was there yesterday. How influential will Carrick be? Because if we're talking about the way that we want to see the game played or the immaculate way of playing, will Michael Carrick have that kind of influence on Mourinho and this United side?
Well, I mean, Carrick's a very intelligent individual. He's doing his badges. You saw the playing career he had. In a way, Manchester United, how things were going for them into 2006. They actually had that sort of difficult period. Carrick came in. There were obviously a lot of other reasons, but Carrick brought a stability, an intelligence, a composure, particularly towards the second half of the season, into Manchester United's midfield. That period from 2006, 2007, almost to 2013, when Ferguson left, was it 5 titles in that era and a Champions League, 2 other Champions League finals.
You did a lot of research on Michael Carrick.
Look, Carrick is. Talk to Manchester United fans, Neil. If you talk to Manchester United fans, you know they love Carrick. So now your question is, can someone like him? You know, he is starting out on his coaching pathway. Mourinho is one of the greatest coaches, most successful coaches of the modern era. So, but I think it's good for him because Carrick actually understands the DNA of the club. He understands how Ferguson played, how the expectations of the fan, the joy that Ollie was touching on, the joy that should be inherent in Manchester United football, more width, which Mourinho seems to rely on 2 ageing fullbacks for his width, both very willing, but
either way, I think you talked about urgency earlier on. I thought the 2 fullbacks had more urgency than anybody. Ashley Young and Valencia.
But Valencia's delivery is poor, and you've got a right footer playing on the left. So
But Carrick, for instance, isn't going to be the assistant manager. It wouldn't seem so. He's going to go outside somewhere else. I don't know who that will be, but it seems that Carrick comes in, a new assistant manager, a new voice, but they've got to have the personalities like Rui Faria had with Jose, because he'd been with him so long, to be able to impose their ideas on him. Haven't they? Not impose, but make him see that there's another way. Because I think Rui Faria, certainly, I don't think he's the greatest friend of a lot of the press lads. Seems to have a.
He doesn't like them.
He seems to have a big influence, doesn't he?
Oh, I've got experience of that one or two airports over the years. Anyway, OK, who's on the flight to Russia? 23 men's squad has been named by Gareth Southgate this week. Jack Wilshere, Joe Hart, they both missed out. Joe Hart's a big pal of Henry. He's upset. We'll talk about that next. Shame we had to have a break because these two have finally agreed on something, which is Alan Shearer. You've been reminiscing about it for the last couple of minutes, and you both idolised him.
We've been reminiscing about pubs in Newcastle, and we both agreed the number one is the Strawberry.
That's next to the ground, yes.
Yeah, very nice.
The one. OK, let's get back to football matters with the FA Cup. The papers this morning, Sunday Times Sport, goodbye kiss. Is this Antonio Conte's last act as the Chelsea manager? They did win the FA Cup yesterday. The Sunday People, some good stories here. To have and to hold, that's Chelsea winning the Cup. But Hammers, they've dumped James Collins by email. Jamie Vardy is on his way to Atletico Madrid, according to Tom Hopkinson this morning. And Newcastle United, it's for sale, but for £400 million, according to them. Back of the Sunday Mirror, something borrowed something blue, royal theme on the back of the red tops this morning. So now sack me, that's Conte's message to the board this morning. Mo Salah, time to deliver. We're coming on to the Champions League final in part 5. We're going to talk about England and the squad. It's a shame, though, this story had to be written. England ready for World Cup races, and Gareth Southgate is going to brief his players when they meet up at St George's Park and throughout the tournament about the threat of racism during the World Cup in Russia. Let's talk about the 23-man squad, though, that was named by Gareth Southgate this week. One or two notable omissions, Joe Hart and Jack Wilshere. You would have picked both of them, though, Henry, wouldn't you?
I would. Joe Hart was obviously going to go as number 3. I think that his experience on and off the pitch, his the respect...
So he was. You said he was going. Joe Hart was going.
No, I'm not saying he was going, but no, I was just saying that no, he would have gone as the number 3.
But
obviously he didn't play the last 3 games of the season, so I think any issue that Joe Hart has is more with David Moyes than with Gareth Southgate. I thought, by all accounts, he handled the phone call from Gareth Southgate well. It can't have been easy. And, you know, he and Jack Wilshere got a little bit of criticism for the messages they put out on social media. I think it's good to know that the players are hurting. I don't want any of them to shrug off any disappointment of not being picked by the country. I think that sent out a fantastic message to the 23 who were there and to the rest of the country and any aspiring player coming through that it is a privilege and an honour to play for your country, and that it hurts Wilshere and Hart, who's played 75 times for his country, that he wasn't picked. It's professional pride, but I think also personal pride. So I quite respected them for their statements that they came out with. But just coming back to Hart, which is what you were getting, I just think that we are going into the unknown. We have a very inexperienced defence. You look at some of the... we've got some hugely promising centre-backs, but you look at the quality of centre-backs and the experienced centre-backs we've taken into previous tournaments, 2006, when you look at Rio Ferdinand, John Terry, Jamie Carragher, Sol Campbell. I think we need even more a good connection between the goalkeeper and the centre-back. So I think that's going to be an issue there. And I think what we have to do is create the best platform for Pickford on and off the pitch. And I think off the pitch, if Joe Hart could have advised him and helped him along with the sort of goalkeeping coach, then great. In terms of Jack Wilshere, I think if you talk to a lot of players, far more expert than a journalist like me, and you go, what's the issue with the England squad? They all say the same thing. Creativity in central midfield. Ruben Loftus-Cheek, fantastic season. He's got the strength, he's got that tactical, but he plays higher up the pitch. Whereas I think if we have got this pace up front, if Rashford plays, Vardy comes on, Sterling obviously is going to start alongside Harry Kane. I think Wilshere's ability to play some of those killer through balls. I think even if he only plays 2 games of the 3 in the group games, even if he's maybe only fit, if he's fit for, say, the first knockout game, if England get through, which they should do, then you use him. OK, it's a gamble, but...
So who would you have left out for Wilshere?
Do you know, I wouldn't have taken Young. I think there's enough if you've got Delph, who can play over there. Danny Rose is obviously going to start as well. I mean, Delph's had a good season, and there's variety there. I mean, when we're all doing our sort of squads over who we think we should take, it was actually quite easy to get to 19-20. But this is not like the Germany squad, whereas Germany, as we saw in the Confederations Cup, they put their sort of B squad in. Germany could easily field 2 squads and get both of them out the group stage. England don't have a depth of talent.
In the final, wouldn't they?
The good thing about
Germany.
The good thing about Southgate is he's been true to his principles from right at the outset, which is he didn't want to take players who were injured, which I think has been such a problem for England managers in the past, and he wanted to pick players in form, and he's always had that philosophy. And actually, he really likes Adam Lallana, and he really wanted to get him into that squad, but decided he wasn't quite fit enough. And funnily enough, even from his quotes this week, it sounds like he'd still love to get Lallana in the squad if he could. And
he's the first reserve.
He's almost hoping that, well, not hoping, but anticipating somebody will get injured along the way in order that he can get it in. But despite the fact he liked Lallana so much, he still didn't go back on that principle of taking anybody who's injured, because it has undone us. We've become obsessed with players who are not quite fit going to squads, and it undermines the whole training camp, the whole way of preparing. Now he's got, at the moment, 23 players going forward who aren't out of form and who are fit, and that to me is a great start.
But Wilshire's playing a lot more than
I would agree, but
different positions.
I'm with you on Wilshere, actually. I do agree with you. I think there was a case for Wilshere. There has been a slight argument about, is Wilshere now a defensive midfield player who surges forward, or is he a more forward-thinking midfielder who has to drop back a bit? And has he got lost between the two stools that we're not quite sure which he is, and he hasn't done enough to show, look, I am this amazing player? I don't mind the fact he says, I thought I should have gone. If he'd done that as an interview in the papers saying, look, I hope the lads do well, but I think I should have gone to the World Cup, we'd all gone, fair enough, good interview, well done for getting that. But because he said it on social media, it's almost, that's terrible. How should you go?
But the irony is, of course, he hasn't picked out one media organisation to go with. He's actually sort of given it to everyone. Absolutely. And the most important thing, he's actually not spoken to us. He's spoken to the fans, saying, listen, I'm hurting, and I'm not going.
No, but he wouldn't have got any criticism if he'd said it in the paper. If he'd said, I thought I should have gone, I'm good.
If he doesn't believe he should be in the squad, how can...
Yeah, exactly.
Who is going to...
Would you have taken him?
Yeah, I would. I'm a huge fan of his, like the rest of us, I think. But I mean, I understand why there are doubts about his ability to play games in quick succession. But I'm kind of with Henry, to be honest. I think he can do things, he can offer things that other players that are in that squad can't. Yeah, I would have taken
the last friendly did him, though, didn't it? Because he bigged himself up going into that friendly. I'm fit. I'm feeling good again. I'm in form. I've just played so many matches on the trot. And then, of course, he pulled out through injury, and it was almost like, can we really rely on him? Not for his skill, but for his injury.
But then, didn't he go and play Arsenal's next game?
Well,
there has been an element of him managing this injury.
But that's going to put doubts in Southgate's mind, isn't it?
But the team will change. And the team that starts the first game will be probably different, certainly in central midfield, to the team that plays against Belgium, where you will need people who don't give the ball.
What excites you about the squad? What do you like about it, Ollie?
Well, I like the youth. I like the tone that Southgate's setting. I think a lot of people wrote about that from the squad announcement. I think from Southgate's press conference. I like the fact that he appears to have a good relationship with the players. I'm led to believe that a lot of the players are very much on side with him, and so I think there's a great. I know this. We say this every time, but I genuinely believe there's a good atmosphere in the squad. The players are enjoying.
Best atmosphere ever.
The players are enjoying playing. I think for him, I like that. I mean, I think we've got. I hope that Harry Kane is fully fit. There are signs that he's been getting back to form after that injury. I think that we have got a lot of very good players going forward. I'm excited about Kane, Sterling, Dele Alli. I mean, I think it's an interesting situation with Dele Alli and Jesse Lingard. I think Jesse Lingard actually to balance things up a little bit with Mourinho has been one of the big success stories of Mourinho's reign. I think he has improved Jesse Lingard, and Jesse Lingard's a terrific player. I think that actually there was a period where Jesse Lingard had moved ahead of Dele Alli in the reckoning. I think particularly the relationship Dele Alli has with Harry Kane perhaps shifts him ahead. I think that forward trident you've got there of Dele Alli, Raheem Sterling and Harry Kane, that excites me. Look, this is not particularly fashionable, although maybe becoming a little bit more fashionable, and I'm biased because I went out to see him in Marbella this week at the Liverpool camp. I'm a big fan of Jordan Henderson, actually, and I think he will provide us with a terrific base. And I think some of the performances he has made for Liverpool this season, particularly in the Champions League, have been absolutely outstanding. So I think...
Just tell us a little bit about him, because I know I've read your interview this morning, Ollie, and he talks about leadership and the correct way to, or what he perceives to be the correct way to behave. Just tell us a little bit about the character that you met this week.
I know Henry knows him well too. I mean, there's I think the word that I would use most of all about him is selflessness. There's an unselfishness about him. There's a genuine desire that the team comes first, and that he is more interested in getting the best out of those around him. It's very much not about him. It's about enabling other players to shine, and I think that comes across in the way he plays his football as well. And I mean, this is another subject altogether. I think perhaps the consensus is it's between him and Harry Kane for the captain. I would make Jordan Henderson our captain. It's another argument how much importance we attach to that, but I think Jordan Henderson sets absolutely the right tone.
Yeah.
He's a leader in an era, society or academies or whatever, where we're not producing many leaders. He's also better technically than people give him credit for. You don't get to a Champions League final, you don't survive midfield battles against Manchester City and Roma without being good technically, as well as Ollie points out, having the temperament. But just coming back to your original point about Southgate, what has he done? I completely agree with the sort of pace and the energy. Southgate has clearly earmarked two issues that have always dogged England: fear and fatigue. And the fatigue he seems to is as much as mental fatigue. But I quite like the fact that he's not taking them off to a training camp in La Manga. He's just having 2 sessions at St George's Park and saying, actually, you've had a long season, go and spend time with your family, because we could, touch wood, spend a bit of time longer time out in Russia.
Just remember Capello in 2010 taking us... Austria, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was.
Running up and down mountains.
It was shocking, and cycling, that was really poor. But then Capello didn't understand the English mentality. But no, you love that.
Sometimes just on the other point, Henry, there could be, if Roy Hodgson had said, go off and go on the lash, lads, for a bit, I think we might have treated it slightly different. We're thinking this is the way Gareth wants to do it.
I don't think this is a squad that's actually full of people who go out on the on the lash. There may be 1 or 2, but what I quite like is that he was very upfront when we had the press conference with him the other day. He said, "Listen, I'm not going to treat them like children. I'm going to treat them like adults." The other thing, coming back to obviously the fatigue, boredom, which is an issue always with England, is fear. We see it every time that the shirt weighs heavy, and he is working hard with the FA. They've got Pip Granger, who's come in from Australian sports to work on their psychological resilience, the FA sort of call it. And I think that is absolutely needed, because at some point we're going to get an Iceland situation where we're going to need leaders. We're going to need individuals actually stepping out and stepping up to the plate.
Who is going to step up? I'd like to know your views on who you think, when this England team come home, whether it's after the group stage, second round, quarter-final, semi-final, final, who will be England's best player at that tournament?
Do you want me to go first?
Can I start?
It's easy. Raheem Sterling.
Raheem Sterling, I was
absolutely.
going to say the same. But the thing about Raheem Sterling is he's got to transfer that Man City form to England. I'm not saying
he did in March. He took complete responsibility for England's performance in March.
For instance, he's got a terrible goal-scoring record for England. It's something like 2 in 30-odd games. And the amount of chances he gets for his conversion rate, even in Man City sometimes, you think he could have had a lot more goals. He's got a lot of goals, but for England...
What's he got, 20 plus this season?
No, but for England, particularly, he's not converted enough chances, and I think he should be taking this tournament and thinking, I can dominate this tournament, I can take it by the scruff of the neck, and I think if he does, then England will. But if he doesn't fire, I think England have got a problem, and they're expecting them to do
I
it.
agree with you. Sterling will be the best player, yeah.
I kind of agree too. The one player that I think will have a good tournament, and I think has been one of the players I've been most impressed by this season, is Kyle Walker. And I think that he's had an absolutely terrific season for Manchester City. And you were asking before what excites me about this squad and Southgate's approach. And one of them is this commitment that finally seems to be taking hold, that we keep the ball, that we try and keep the ball a bit more. And that starts in defence. And we can argue about Jordan Pickford or Jack Butland, but certainly I think I like the way that Pickford, that starts with Pickford when Pickford plays. And I think Kyle Walker is bred in that way now at Manchester City, and I think he'll be an outstanding success at this tournament too.
Yeah, let's hope they do succeed as well. Let's hope they go on to have a good tournament. OK, back to the Premier League next. We're going to talk managers. Mikel Arteta about to be appointed at Arsenal. More on him next. Having these three on, they scramble my brain. They're supposed to be having Mikel Arteta chat now at Arsenal. Henry wants to talk about Arteta. Shaun wants to start with Big Sam. Well, there's a Carvajal fan over here, a Darren Moore fan over there.
Start with Arteta.
No,
we'll start with Arteta.
No, we've done it now. You've done it. No, you've done it. Let's talk Big Sam.
All right.
Let's talk Big Sam.
Henry wants to talk about Russian racism.
Should Big Sam have been sacked? I know the answer, but should Big Sam have been sacked?
No, and he did a great job for them. I don't want Everton fans, I understand, want super attractive football. They say that the argument is, well, we were never going to go down anyway. Well, if you didn't think you were going to go down, presumably you wouldn't have appointed Sam Allardyce in the first place, because he guarantees that you will not go down. So once he pulled them clear, it seemed to me that, oh, well, we're fed up with this now. Why aren't we challenging for Europe with this team and playing super fantastic, attractive football? He took them from, you can argue 15th, because when he came in, there was that night when he saw them win, but it was the Allardyce effect, obviously, that got that win. But he took them at least from 13th to 8th. What do you want in a season like that? And why isn't he given the chance to take them on to next? Why isn't he backed with money? Now, his understanding was, from Farhad Moshiri, that he would be kept on. He was told, basically, that prepare for next season, carry on. The agent was told the same thing. And then there was a change of mind. Partly, you would think, because of fan reaction, but the thing about fan reaction is you get booed in a stadium, and because of social media nowadays, you're getting booed every minute of the day, aren't you? You leave the stadium and you get booed all week, and then you come back again, and there's a crescendo of it again at the next match. So there was a build-up which maybe scared the owners, but also, who's pulling the strings at Everton? Is it Moshiri? Is there somebody working behind the scenes? Who makes these decisions? I don't think that's clear either. And I don't think it's clear what exactly they want and who it is that everybody on the board can agree on. I don't think we know.
Well, I think it's clear that there's a confused situation at Everton in terms of the direction of the club, and I think that isn't doing anybody any favours. And there's a feeling of, irrespective of the rights and wrongs of Sam's situation, I think there's clearly there's a feeling of drift and confusion and no clear direction from the top, and which is a shame.
Marco Silva, will he get the job?
Probably.
Eventually.
But they take... I mean, there is an argument about that they're known to have approached him beforehand. Will they be... There was a story going on in the week that they might be done by the Premier League for that. I think that's who certain aspects of the board seem to want, and you would think he will get it. But what is the argument for Marco Silva? What is his track record in this country? He came with a good reputation. He left with not a very good reputation, really.
He seemed to leave with a better reputation, didn't he? He took Holt down, and his reputation seemed to be enhanced.
It did, yes, and then Watford didn't work.
Job.
And to me, I don't see the argument why he's going to be better.
OK.
No, I tell you what, there's a lot of pressure on him going in there, because if he does go in there, they're going to be wanting him to play like Brazil and win the Premier League.
Yeah.
Well,
okay.
So look, there's obviously a lot of sympathy for Allardyce, but there's another issue here about engaging with fans. And it's, you go in to do Benitez was brilliant at it at Newcastle and at Liverpool, less so at Chelsea for many reasons. But actually, it's about you engage with supporters, you go and do the podcast, you know, it's...
So you'd have got rid of him?
You send out a survey?
No,
You'd got rid of him?
No, I wouldn't have got rid of Allardyce, because you know what's going to happen? November, Allardyce's phone is just going to be glowing with calls from concerned chairmen saying, we've got a manager in here and we're a little bit worried about tumbling down the table. Can you come in and rescue us?
Yeah. It's £5 million.
Yeah.
OK. That's one manager down. Let's talk Mikel Arteta. We think he'll be appointed as the next Arsenal manager, or coach, common parlance now. Is he the right man for the job?
Well, he's obviously got a strong relationship with Gazidis, the chief executive, from his playing days. Personally, I think Arsenal need a complete clear-out. I think they should have got... I mean, I understand Simeone is so embedded in Atletico Madrid, but I think they need someone, a strong individual, experienced manager, to go in there and address all the failings, not just of the Wenger era, which we've seen for the last 6-7 years, but with Gazidis and Kroenke. And that is actually to go and sort out that dressing room, to get rid of Mustafi, to maybe actually have a word with Bellerin and coach him properly. You know, if you actually look at that Arsenal squad, how many truly world-class players are there that you'd keep? Aubameyang, definitely. Mesut Ozil, if he focused, and a strong manager like Simeone would do it. I'm not saying necessarily Simeone, but the Simeone type, someone who's experienced, someone who is tough, someone who would get into a very, very soft dressing room, a soft boardroom, there's a soft executive at that club. There is a malaise that runs right through the club, which is not simply going to be solved by Wenger going. Wenger was the symptom of it, and he was partly the cause of it. But it's, you know, they just need stronger individuals in there. They need leaders in there, and Simeone would be good. Having said that, Arteta, if I was going to go for a former player, I would have thought Vieira, with his experience, with his obviously stronger engagement with the supporters, the symbol of the Invincibles, historically, and also Vieira's innate nature. Arteta, let's not forget, was part of the problem of the Wenger era in terms of fantastic player, far better with Everton than with Arsenal. But actually, you know, he was one of the leaders there at a time when the team and the club were drifting. So he's got to explain how he can break that. But there is a logic.
They seem to want somebody who's pliable.
Yeah.
So, and he's definitely going
grateful.
to be... And grateful. And he's definitely going to be that. And as you say, that doesn't seem to be the right way to go for that club, does it?
And if they're really only going to be giving him 50 million, I mean, I'm sure there must be... You know, you obviously don't want to say, I've got a £200 million war chest, because the prices obviously go up. But that squad needs so much work. It needs so much... I mean, it's the amount of deadwood there.
They're not giving him it, though, are they? They're giving their director of football it. They're not really giving it to Arteta. They're saying, well, what do you think, Mikel? But we're really going to go by the players.
You're just here to coach the players and pick the team.
Yeah. But sorry, he has got to... But he is going to want to coach players and bring in players that he wants, that fits in with his way.
To be able to do that?
Will the Arsenal fans, Ollie, accept Mikel Arteta as their new coach?
Yeah, I think they will, because I think they're at a stage where they were so keen to see the end of Wenger, and I understand that. I think the thing was exhausted, and it was exhausting. So I think they will. He was a popular player, although, as Henry said, I think he was probably better at Everton. But I think they will. I'm not convinced about him. I think it's, as your predecessor Brian Woolnough once said, I think it's a brave decision. Look, as I said on here, I think a few weeks ago, I would have liked to seen Brendan Rodgers get it. I think he would have been I think he did a fantastic job at Liverpool. He's done a great job at Celtic, and I think he would have done some of the things that Henry suggested need to be done. He would have been a fresh voice. And I'm not... The reservation I have, I think, is probably the same reservation that Henry has, is that at heart, is that they need a change. They need an absolute change, and there's just a danger that I think that Arteta is schooled in the old ways, and the old ways are not what Arsenal need.
If you know your London areas, they need a little bit more Holloway and a little less Hampstead. They need a real sort of someone just to sort of toughen them up.
You're about to write a column on Arsenal, by the way.
No, I'm not. No. I've been battering Wenger for years. I'm sort of slightly sort of Arsenal down. But just one thing on Arteta, he does improve players. You know, you've seen it with Sterling. So I do think he will work with them. But they don't need a number two. They need a strong number one.
It's interesting what Ollie says about Brendan Rodgers, because I'm pretty sure he fancied it. And he was saying things like, oh, no, I'm not interested. I'm happy to tell that he's just won a second successive domestic treble. he's not going to win the Champions League. Where are you going from there? There's a desperation from him to prove himself in the Premier League. There is. And if Arsenal had really gone for it and said, and look, as Henry said, if you're saying to somebody like Rodgers, there's 50 million to spend, I know he hasn't had that at Celtic, but that for any new manager coming in is not enough with that team. If they'd said, we'll back you, Brendan, 100%, and there'll be 150 million, 200 million, he'd have snapped their hands off, and I'm sure he would have come down to Arsenal.
Yeah,
I'm sure.
OK, well, that's not going to happen, we don't think, because Mikel Arteta is going to get the Arsenal job. We've got a lot of managers to get through, I think 3 more. David Moyes leaving West Ham, Manuel Pellegrini coming into the London Stadium. Thoughts on that, Henry?
Well, there are only 2 problems with West Ham. They've got just a charmless, dreadful board who one of them thinks he can pick the squad, and they've got a completely soulless stadium. And the fans...
And on the plus side?
Well, look, those supporters are fantastic if they feel the board is going to support them, if they're seeing decent football. There are not many pluses in that. I mean, they should not be playing in that ground. It is the complete antithesis of Upton Park. They should have started again. Daniel Levy was right. They should have knocked it down, but unfortunately, all the sort of the Olympic balls got involved, and they couldn't knock it down. But, you know, he got some decent players. I actually thought Moyes did a fairly decent job there in terms of, you know, how he re-energised Arnautovic. He sort of kept them up. But the story
brief was to keep them up, wasn't it? That's the priority. Just do whatever it takes.
But also, I think Cascarino was talking about it on the radio yesterday. What happened to James Collins? Getting an email. I'm sorry, if someone's been there 11 years, you know, if he's going to get an email from the club, he probably thinks it's going to be headed, we're offering you a testimonial, rather than, you know, you're out the door. Unfortunately, West Ham don't do things with enough dignity, enough class, and they're letting down the players, and I worry about whoever goes in there. Pellegrino? I mean, is he the right man? Whichever one you're going to get.
Pellegrino.
I tell you what, whichever one you're going to get.
It will be Pellegrini, and it will be Pellegrini tomorrow. And they seem to think that he's the right man for the job. Clearly, look, he is a title winner. From a press point of view, a bit dull, but you know, maybe West Ham need a bit dull for a while.
Yeah. But what about your columnist?
What about her?
Karen Brady. I mean, is she part of the problem or part of the solution, though?
What do you mean part of the problem? She's
she's on the board. She's driving this through.
Column.
No, we'll just leave the newspaper column aside.
Which occasionally scuppers transfers in and out of the club.
Which more than occasionally says it how it is. What's wrong with that? I've seen journalists actually saying, how dare Karen Brady write this in a column? She should have done it on the official website. Why? What is wrong with her?
So do you think it helps the club? Do you think the fans like it?
I think she writes she engages with football people about what is happening in football. Surely that's an interesting aspect.
So it's nothing. So it's nothing to do with self-promotion. It's purely she's spreading the word.
You have a big problem with it. You don't think she should be doing a column. You're advocating that somebody at a football club shouldn't do pieces in a newspaper.
No,
is that what you're saying? So it's all right for Jordan Henderson.
Don't start having a go at me.
He's the one who's sit down with you and talk however he wants to talk. But it's not all right for the vice chair at West Ham to sit down.
You're having a scattergun. I didn't say anything about it. My problem with Karen Brady has got nothing to do with the column in your paper. My problem with Karen Brady is, like Henry said, I agree with every single word Henry said about the board at that club, and my problem with her is that she thought she got the deal of the century, as she called it, by moving to a stadium which has robbed West Ham of its character and has destroyed the fan base there, has destroyed the atmosphere there. She thought she was getting a deal on the cheap, and she's ended up selling the club down the river.
But she is allowed to have her point of view. She doesn't think she did sell the club down the river. It wasn't solely her decision either. She had to have Golden Sullivan on board with it. And
what, are you a mouthpiece, Shaun? Shaun, are you a mouthpiece? You're a mouthpiece, Shaun.
I don't need to be her mouthpiece.
Sometimes board members should be seen and not heard. I don't think it helps.
You were happy to see Joe Hart talk on Instagram, and you were happy to see Jack Wilshere say what he said, but you're not happy to see Karen Brady say what she wants.
He's got enough fights.
Perfectly entitled to say what she wishes to say.
Joe Hart and Jack Wilshere were just 2 individual tweets or sort of Instagram messages. I don't think it helps the club when you have the 3 main individuals at the club talking all the time, certainly 2 of them talking all the time, one in a set-piece situation and then Sullivan with his sort of various interviews and whatever. I think that that is not good for the manager, whoever it is.
I'm just looking on the floor. Has anyone seen the pin from that grenade that Henry launched? I can't find it. We're going to try and find it in the break. When we come back, we're going to talk about the Champions League final. We've been quiet as mice during the break, honestly. Ollie's written about Darren Moore getting the West Brom job this morning in his column in the Mail on Sunday. Ollie, why in particular are you pleased that Darren Moore has been given the job full-time as the West Brom manager?
Because mainly, I suppose, because I thought his results deserved it, and he transformed a club that was in a dreadful state into one that seems to have a bit of hope for the future and for next season in the 6 games that he was there. So I'm pleased that, I think West Brom had promoted him from youth team coach to first team coach already, and now they've promoted him to manager on a full-time basis, and I think that says a lot for the club. But I'm also pleased, Neil, because I still think the system's loaded against aspiring black coaches, and I think obviously that's a huge matter for debate, but I think that the statistics back that up. With the appointment of Darren Moore, that means we now have 6 black coaches or BAME coaches in this league, which isn't enough. I think there was actually a survey in the Sun said at the start of this season said 33% or close to a third of players are that. So we're not seeing a translation into aspiring black coaches being trusted with running the club. So I think it's a leap forward for black managers, and I hope that it will give people some encouragement that they're not just running into a dead end when they take their badges.
Yeah, sure. And also you also credit West Brom as well for the steady promotion.
Absolutely.
Of Darren Moore through the ranks, and now of course he has eventually become the full-time manager of the club. So good luck to Darren Moore.
Yeah, I hope people follow their example.
Yeah, I'm sure they will. OK, good luck to Darren Moore. Let's talk about Liverpool and the Champions League final. You've been out to Marbella this week. What's the mood like in terms of their preparation ahead of this game against Real Madrid in Kiev next week?
Well, I just sat on a terrace watching expats play golf, so I'm not. I wasn't watching training. I wasn't sort of having a meal with them. I went and talked to one of the players, and I just think that looking at it from the outside, when you've got a manager like Klopp, there's a buzz about the place because they want to play for him, because they like him. He's such an engaging character, and he's not simply this sort of emotional sort of firecracker of an individual. There's so much sports science, there's so much tactics, there's so much thought. There's so much brain behind the heart as well, and in a way that's the perfect combination for a manager who is, Ferguson was like that. Ferguson had his sort of tactical side, or certainly people like Carlos Queiroz, whoever, to sort of advise him on the tactical side, but also he had this sort of emotional engagement with the players. I think there's a little bit of fear factor as well with Klopp. He's quite sort of an impressive, imposing figure. You wouldn't necessarily want to cross him, but you can just tell how the players warm to him, how he makes good players better. You've seen it with the 2 fullbacks. I'll tell you what, he's given them. How much did they cost them? What was Robertson? Sort of 12 million or whatever. Obviously, Trent Alexander-Arnold came through the system. And what I like is you see players, when they make the mistakes, he backs them. So Trent Alexander-Arnold obviously got caught out by Rashford, obviously against Zaha, your mate, particularly in the first half of the Palace match. And you knew that Manchester City, were going to target him. You saw them sticking all those diagonals on there for Leroy Sané, but Klopp had believed in Alexander-Arnold, and he's just developed. And absolutely now he's that's the greatest compliment of all. And you saw, unfortunately, Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain got that unfortunate injury, because I think he's been galvanised. If you want a picture of why Klopp's good and why Wenger had lost it, look at Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain, the way he developed, the performance he put in midfield for Liverpool after moving from Arsenal. So I just think Klopp is central to that. And then you just look at the freedom that he's given these front players, and everyone quite rightly talks about Mo Salah. It's interesting being out talking to Spanish journalists and people out in Spain. the Real Madrid fans and journalists, they are concerned about Salah, but they've also got to watch out for Firmino, because the work that Firmino does as that false number 9, creating the space, dragging centre-backs out of position for Salah to move into, or for Mane to cut into using his pace, in a way that is just such a well-balanced attacking trident. And Klopp deserves credit for putting the three of them together, but also giving them that licence.
The build-up, will it all be Salah and Ronaldo this week?
Well, Salah said himself the week before last, he was saying, this is not all about me and Ronaldo. There's a lot more to it. However, I do think whoever emerges as the best player in that game will be the one who lifts the trophy, because I think there's such influential players. I take Henry's point about Firmino, but Salah has the ability to take the game by the scruff of the neck, dominate the whole thing, and I think Ronaldo's got the same. Whoever's in best form, that team will win it.
Who do you think?
Well, I do think that Firmino is the diamond in that team, and I think that when you hear Klopp talk about the players, Klopp is a huge fan of Firmino, quite rightly. So it's going to be a fantastic final. I think we knew the FA Cup final wasn't going to be a barn burner. I think this one might be.
Yeah, and let's hope for an absolute classic next week. Champions League final, of course, Liverpool against Real Madrid. That's in Kiev. OK, that's all we've got time for today. Thanks to the guys. It's the last show of the season. Thanks to Shaun, thanks to Ollie, and thanks to Henry for joining us this morning here on the Sunday Supplement. Lots of football is still coming your way. Next weekend, it's the playoffs. The Championship begins on Saturday. Championship playoff finals on Saturday. Aston Villa against Fulham. Rotherham against Shrewsbury on Sunday. And Monday, Coventry against Exeter. Thanks very much for watching. We'll see you next season. Bye for now.
Sky Sports. Feel it all.